Hello friends, and here's my next video, and I think I'm going to call this Look Into My Eyes, Look Into My Eyes, You're Under. And anyone who knows the reference will know that's all about mass hypnosis or hypnosis. So I want to go into a little bit of history about hypnosis. Some of you may know that I am a hypnotherapist of many years standing, but I also work transpersonally or integratively, which means I don't just use hypnosis. It's one of the tools that I have. And when I was training, it's amazing. You know, hypnosis is absolutely amazing because you can seemingly reach into people's unconscious minds and cause them to feel different. It is really quite phenomenal how much you can do that. I tend not to use that form of hypnosis so much in my practice. I tend to use a more interactive one, but the suggestion hypnosis is phenomenally powerful. And it takes a certain style and a certain character to be able to impose or impart that kind of knowledge. But the history of hypnosis comes from a guy called James Braid in the 19th century. And he'd been studying Mesmer, where we get this mesmerized word from. And Anton Mesmer was a conjurer. He had a following and he claimed to have great healings with very bizarre and unusual practices. But James Braid coined the term hypnosis because what he originally thought was happening was that people were falling into a state of sleep. And it was in this state of sleep, from the word hypnos, or the god of sleep, that you could reach somebody's unconscious mind and you could influence it. And then later on, he realized it wasn't anything to do with sleep. It was to do with the domination of one idea. And he tried to change the concept of hypnosis or hypnotism to monoidism, which is the domination of a single idea. But unfortunately, it just didn't catch on. So he was stuck with this idea of sleep, which is where so many misconceptions happen when people come to see you. Oh, you're not going to put me to sleep, are you? I am going to be conscious, am I? Or I don't want to be conscious, or whatever, you know, put me under, as though anyone has that power over them. Or do they? This is why I say it takes a certain character to be able to kind of gain the profound trust of somebody to be able to suggest things to them that they could do and that might be true for them. So I want to take you through these are related, but two different ideas to do with randomized controlled trials for all kinds of things to do with medicine and health and well-being, and also obviously psychology. And I say obviously because, you know, RCTs, randomized controlled trials, are often plagued by the placebo effect. And what that means is it's very hard to control for somebody who may just be getting better because they're in a placebo situation, i.e. it's suggested to them when they take this tablet, they will feel better, or whether it's just the actual action of the experiment. So it's quite hard to control for. They do try and control for it, but even then, even in your control groups, you'd have the people that have been given the placebo and the people that are given the real drug, and you would tell them both they don't know which is which, and you'd think that would be controlling for it. But however, these people are being studied. They know they're being studied, and they're part of an experiment. So even then, the fact they're gaining attention from somebody still muddies the water because they're in a sample. It still muddies the water. They're being treated for something. So it's not pure placebo. It's very hard to isolate, and they do try, but there's many ways of countering that. And the opposite of placebo is nocebo. And the nocebo effect is where, for example, I make a really negative suggestion and then it comes true for you. So for example, many people that might be suggested that they have cancer and they might die within 6 months. Many do die on cue. They just accept the opinion the nocebo. They believe it to be true. So the word belief takes me to that part where what makes any of this real, like hypnotism, nocebo, placebo, the only thing that makes any of this plausible is belief. We have to believe that we're going to be under hypnosis. We have to believe that the nocebo effect, we wouldn't need to know what it's called, but we have to believe, for example, that we are ill and we are going to die for it to happen. We have to believe, for example, that we are going to get well with a placebo drug, even if we don't know what it is. The belief itself changes how you respond. So the power of belief is profound. So what you believe in to be true, you make it so. I'm sorry to sound a bit Jean-Luc Picard, but you do. So you make it so. What you believe is true becomes your truth. So this takes me on to the kind of idea of stage hypnosis. And, you know, how do you get a whole group of people on a stage to behave like chickens and cluck like chickens? How do you do that? Well, firstly, the stage hypnotist is a person of authority. If you know, they look like they know what they're doing, and they make it nice and friendly and kind and funny, and it's all part of the show. So how do they get those people to come up to the front and behave like chickens? Well, there's a series of suggestibility tests. So they go through, you know, raise your hands, you know, your hands are stuck together in the air. You link your hands together like this, and they're stuck together in the air. And they're stuck so tight that when you try and pull them apart, you simply can't. And the majority of people will just try and pull their hands apart and they will come apart. But there are a number that will keep it together because they have a level of suggestibility. And then they go through more suggestibility tests and more suggestibility tests. And eventually they've got a dozen or 20 people that are still doing what the stage hypnotist wants them to. And those 20 people will come on the stage and they will do whatever the hypnotist wants them to do. Now, they are fully conscious. They are not asleep. Some of them out of embarrassment or wanting to take part in the whole show and not really admit that they didn't know what was happening, or did know what was happening, sorry. Some of those will pretend that they were fast asleep and they didn't know. Maybe one or two might be totally entranced by the hypnotist. But what we have here is the power of conformity. You get one or two people up on the stage and they're doing what everyone else, you know, he wants everyone to do. And eventually you'll find that the rest of them conform because they can hear from the audience, they can hear from what's going on around them, that these things are happening. So you've got not only the power of belief that this person, you know, I'm allowing myself to be hypnotized by this person, but then you have the power of conformity. So, I then sort of, as I was preparing for this video, I went into a website. Let me see if I can share my screen, if I can pull it up quickly. Okay, I'm going to share this one, share, see if I can pull it up really fast. This is it. And I came across this site and I looked up this guy, Samuel Lopez de Victoria, PhD, and he's a therapist in private practice. So he last updated this on the 8th of July 2018, so it's nearly 2 years old. And he talks about the manipulation of the masses and how the media psychologically manipulates their message. And he goes through, I mean, he is an actual psychotherapist in practice, so he goes through a number of different ways in which the media influences and courts opinion. And he says guilt by association, you know, for example, Prince Andrew and Prince Andrew, initially guilt by association. Let's look at Prince Charles, guilt by association. He knew, what do you call his name? Jimmy Savile. And it's very likely true, but we've not heard any evidence yet, have we? Just a little poison. So this is where they tell a truth, but then they mix some poison with it, things that aren't true. And eventually that slowly starts to seep into the popular psyche. They make it funny. So they take, they put a picture of somebody that they want to defame next to a picture of a clown, just happenstance, accidentally. Sandwiches are good. Making sandwiches, I often talk about the sandwich, which is about, if you want to deliver a difficult message, you put it between two positives. So, I really like the way you deal with situations of this kind. However, this one was a little bit difficult. So in future, it'd be great if you could just let me know and it would be all sorted out. So it's kind of like what I would call a sandwich. But they do it the other way. They defame somebody and then they say, yeah, fantastic. And then they say, yeah, but, no good. Then you've got stacking the experts. This is classic. So you get all experts on a panel on the TV who are of a similar mind except one. And so therefore, the one that has the counter view looks completely ridiculous, batshit crazy. And then you've got ridicule and labeling. So we just call people names. We don't have to prove anything. We just call it. But the thing that strikes me more than anything is this idea of repetition makes true. And they know this. This is very well known. Anyone who's done any online advertising, which I've done many, 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 many years of with my psychotherapy practice, will know that the more times the people meet the same piece of information, the more influenced and more controlled they can be. So what I find amazing is this was updated in 2018, and if you look, as you should be able to, at that one, repetition makes true. Incessant repetition of a lie registers this as truth in the mind of the masses. Mass hysteria can be created by repeatedly reporting the dangers of some microbe infesting humans and taking over the world in tones of panic. Some of the most successful tyrants in history used great emotion and repetition to their advantage. Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler's propaganda minister, said that if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. So I just want to stop the share at the moment there and focus a little bit on mass hysteria and mass propaganda, and to draw a little parallel between what we think is going on right now and the controller virus. And the point is, in Hitler's Germany, he had a totally centralized media, and he was able, with his propaganda minister, Goebbels, to broadcast anything he wanted. How do you make that stick into people's mind? Well, repetition is phenomenal. Then there's belief. If you have somebody who appears very authoritative, again, you've got this effect that, well, there must be authority. They know what they're talking about. It must be true. At the end of the Second World War, the occupying powers that went into Germany split up Germany into East and West. And in the Western part, which is the one that we're more familiar with, the East was obviously the Russian side. On the Western part, they split up the country into 13 Länder, which are like counties. And they made a promise to never centralize the media again, because it was only because of a centralized media that Hitler had the power over the people that he had. Now, some people at this point might be thinking, well, how on earth can that be possible now, that the media could be lying? How could they possibly be lying in order to manipulate and control the masses? Well, I want to just draw your attention to the fact that at the last count, there were 5 major media outlets around the Western world, for sure, that broadcast exactly the same message, or within a very, very small, level of variants every day, 24/7. So the question is, if they're broadcasting that, they want to be seen to be the truth. And therefore, they're saying anything that isn't that is fake. Now, if we go back to Germany's example, everything that was broadcast by the central media was fake because the agenda was to whip people up into the nationalistic sense of duty and pride, and to overlook the smoke that was coming out of the chimneys just down the road, to overlook the fact that Jews were being dragged out of their homes, in fact, to co-opt the general population to snitch on the Jews that were being dragged out of their home and feel good about it, even if somewhere deep inside they didn't really feel it was right, because everyone was doing it and because it was in the media, it must have been the right thing to do. You see, when a person gets panicked or gets convinced by one idea, monoidism, when a person becomes convinced of one idea, it's very hard to shift that perception away from it. It's very hard to really understand that it's just an idea. It may not have as much truth to it as you think. Now, that doesn't mean, and I don't want to cause too much disharmony here, that doesn't mean there may not be a virus. But what I find fascinating is that this incident has very, very low levels of morbidity compared to the flu. Amazingly, cases of pneumonia have plummeted this year. And is that because they're all being attributed to this new virus? And so we have a media that wants us to believe that they are the only ones with the truth, when we know that that is a very, very unipolar, dangerous position for all of us to live within. And that it allows the media and all of its co-opted individuals who either know or have been whipped up into the fear-mongering to continue to broadcast fear. When a people are in fear, they lose their logic. They cannot think past their immediate survival strategies. And I want to then bring in, I haven't called it up, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And anyone who knows anything about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'll put a link below. Maslow said that we can only come up to our higher selves and our higher thinking selves and our freedom selves when all of our basic needs have been met. So there are layers of different needs that people have. One of the basic needs is for safety. And if we're being told we're not safe, we simply can't think any higher up that pyramid, because it's a hierarchy, it's a pyramid. Sorry, I'm not signing to anyone. If you know what I'm saying, it is a pyramid, okay? So the hierarchy of needs goes up and it gets more and more. The more my base needs are fulfilled, the more I can actually get onto my higher function and my higher purpose. If you fear you are not safe, you just won't even be able to think beyond your immediate danger. Or fabricated danger, we don't know, we don't know really. So what I'm saying with this video is, please don't dismiss alternative forms of information. The alt media has exploded with real scientific experts, real political commentators, real people who have an opinion on what is going on. And they are being closed down very quickly because people are doing what they did in Nazi Germany. And I'm sorry to say it, they are pointing fingers and saying, it's not me, it's them. I'm not disobeying the rules, it's them. And before you know this will have legs on it that will just grow and grow and grow. So I hope that works for you, I'm going to leave it there and wish you a good day. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video. Take care.